Hey fellow tamers and Digidestined, it's Mike, aka Sanaku from Overground, and welcome to episode 3 of the Rainbow series, where in this episode we're going to be covering the color blue. Again, if you're unfamiliar with our Rainbow series, what we do is that every time a new set releases, we build a deck based on our favorite Digimon, our favorite archetypes, and our favorite strategies. Sometimes we revisit old strategies to try to make them a little bit better, and sometimes we try something new. In this case, for the blue color of the 1.5 version of the Rainbow series, we decided to build UlforceVeedramon. Ulforce was a very popular archetype in Japan as soon as the second set had released, and unfortunately it kind of got a little bit eclipsed as soon as the third set, BT3, took its place. So the way we got our 1.5 set structured, we got everything 1.0 and 1.5 together, I guess. We got everything from set 1 through 3 pretty much all at the same time, but kind of separated into two different halves. So our meta for 1.0 is different than what Japan's first two sets would have been, for example. And what we see here is kind of the best way to build Ulforce, in my opinion, at least the best first draft of how to build Ulforce, given the 1.5 card pool and how it can compete with other cards moving into the 1.5 format. So we'll break it down real quick. We'll kind of go one card at a time, and I'll kind of explain what my choices are and why they are the way they are. So first things first, let's talk about Ulforce himself. So Ulforce, he's the star of the show, and he's kind of the main centerpiece of this entire deck. So let's talk about him, and then we'll kind of talk about how everything else relates to him that you see on the table. So Ulforce, he's 11,000 DP, 13 cost to hard drop, 3 to Digivolve, and his effect is that during our turn, every time one of our blue tamers becomes suspended, he can unsuspend himself, which means that every time a blue tamer is suspended, that gives him 1 additional attack. And then once per turn, when he becomes unsuspended during our main phase, we get to gain 1 extra memory, which is very, very powerful. So I think let's talk about the tamers first, and then I'll work my way through the Digimon. So in this deck, obviously, because you want to be suspending as much blue tamers as possible to get so many extra attacks out of UlforceVeedramon, we're playing as many blue tamers as possible that give us good on-play effects, good static effects, as well as effects that allow us to suspend them proper to keep fueling our unlimited attack power with UlforceVeedramon. So we're going to complement that with 4 copies of the V-Tamer tie. This is one of the box topper promos that you can get from both 1.0 and 1.5 boxes. And he comes paired with the Veedramon Zero that we'll talk to about very soon. So how Tai says is that if you have if Digimon with Veedramon in its name, you can suspend this tamer and activate one of the following effects. You either get to draw 1 card from your deck, or you can give 1 Digimon 1,000 for the turn. So already you can kind of see the synergy with Ulforce. You attack with Ulforce, and then after it's suspended, that attack resolves. You can activate your tamer, draw a card, or give Ulforce 1,000, and then all of a sudden Ulforce triggers, and he can actually unsuspend himself, allowing him to attack 1 more time. This is really good in a number of reasons, because we're playing so many Veedramon cards in the deck as well, so we can actually get a lot of advantage from this tie from other forms of Veedramon that aren't necessarily Ulforce himself. And playing 4 copies of Tai, because he's 2 cost, and he also allows us to get a quick draw if we have a Veedramon in play. So he's a quick, cheap draw engine to help us keep cycling through our deck and help us hit the finishing points and the key cards that we need to kind of make the strategy go round. Next card in the tamer lineup is Rina. So Rina is one of the video game characters that was translated into a tamer card. I believe her and Taiga are the only ones up to this point before we get the Cyber Sleuth kids. And what Rina says is that, so Rina's 3 cost instead. When Rina is played, you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and you add 1 card with V in its name among them, and you can add it to your hand, and you could put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. Now, this is important because this helps us get our Veedramon cards, but furthermore, it also helps us search our Vmon cards and X-Vmon cards, which is going to be a potential alternate win condition side strategy that we can also take with this deck as well. So she kind of synergizes with Ulforce specifically, but also synergizes with kind of the Vmon archetype as a whole. And her other effect is that when one of our blue Digimon attacks, I can suspend Rina herself to give that Digimon plus 1,000 DP for the turn. So I can declare an attack with UlforceVeedramon, tap Rina to give that Ulforce plus 1,000 on the attack declaration window, and then Ulforce will immediately untap due to his own effect. So we have 7 total tamers that allow us to suspend them proper in order to trigger our UlforceVeedramon unsuspend effect. And the last 2 tamers we're playing in the deck are 2 Davis. Now, in regular circumstances, these probably should have been Matt's, because Matt is the set 1 Matt specifically for 4 cost. He can suspend himself when we put a blue Digimon in play to remove a source. While this would potentially trigger our Ulforce as well, I found that passive effect wasn't very powerful due to the fact that it requires a blue Digimon to enter play, not be Digivolve, so we need to hard play a blue Digimon in order to trigger it. And when we're playing a game where we don't have that much memory every single turn, I wanted just to capitalize on the tamers that could just tap themselves pretty much for free without any additional outside requirement. The reason that we play Davis is because not only does he give us 3 at the start of our turn, which is very important because it helps us get into our combos a little bit faster and a little bit more consistently without ending our turn. Davis also lets us look at the top 3 cards of our deck and add any blue and green Digimon that we find to our hand. And like we discussed in other deck profiles as well, we don't play any green Digimon, but we can get any blue Digimon that we reveal. So between the 3 Rina and the 2 Davis, that is an extra source of consistency that can pretty much nab any single Digimon in the deck. Rina covers the V package, which is pretty much half of the Digimon, and Davis can cover the remaining half by just any blue Digimon that we add. So now that we've covered kind of why the tamers are here and how they impact Ulforce, let's discuss the rest of the deck. So I mentioned earlier that the Vmon strategy itself is kind of an alternate win condition and a side strategy of sorts. So that's why we're playing the Demi Vmon, 4 Demi Vmon eggs, this particular one. And this is the one where if you attack with something with jamming, you get to trigger draw 1, which combos exceptionally well with this new BT3 Vmon that we got in our 1.5 set. And this is just a regular 3-cost rookie for 2000 DP who has jamming. So if we evolve Vmon on top of our Demi Vmon, we bring him up the next turn, we attack with jamming, we get a chip damage out of our opponent. It's likely going to survive unless it's something like red and we run into something like Gaia Force, or our opponent has like a blocker, for example. Then we get just an extra free draw. This is kind of like Upamon Eat Your Heart Out, whereas Upamon had the condition where our opponent had to have something, without a source. This just requires the Digimon to have jamming. And as you'll see as we go through the remainder of the deck, there's going to be a lot of potential to give our Digimon jamming to actually reap that benefit a lot more often. And this Vmon, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because we're going to talk about X Vmon here. So X Vmon is when you Digivolve, you get to unsuspend one of your level 4 or lower Digimon. So if you actually have Vmon in play with another level 3, you can attack with the Vmon, Digivolve the other level 3 into X Vmon, and then use this effect to unsuspend this Vmon and attack again. So what ends up happening is that you can kind of build up quick, easy chip damage in the early game, because since we play so many tamers in Ulforce, it takes maybe 3 or 4 turns to set up properly, so we actually have a good final kill shot with Ulforce. And we're kind of using the Vmons and the X Vmons here to kind of chip away at our opponent's security little by little, and then we're going to level up into one giant Ulforce stack and kind of use that to finish out the game with the unlimited amount of attacks that we can get with it. So moving on from the jamming Vmon, we also play the other Vmon, and this is the inheritable that every time a Digimon, or once per turn rather, not every time, Digimon is unsuspended during the main phase, we get to trigger draw 1. So this also combos really well with our X Vmon, because we can actually attack with this Vmon. If it survives, evolve the X Vmon on top of it, untap itself, and then we actually get to draw a card. So again, just extra pieces of consistency, and as we know with the Ulforce, it unsuspends itself on a regular basis, so we do get that draw 1 from this Vmon as well, often. And to round out a rookie lineup, we're just playing the best high-impact rookies that you can play in blue, and that's the Gomamon with the inheritable on-deletion gain 1 memory, and the Gabumon with the on-play effect of draw 1 card. We already touched on X Vmon, so we're just going to skip ahead to him real quick. Next, we're moving on to Veedramon. And Veedramon here is, if you have a blue tamer in play, he himself gets jamming. Now, there are a lot of arguments in certain builds, like Imperial Digimon, for example. Do you play Veedramon because you're playing Davis, or do you just play Frigimon because you don't need the outside tamer? In a deck like Ulforce, you're playing so many tamers that it's unlikely that you'll never have a tamer in play, so this Veedramon is always generally going to have jamming. And this goes kind of hand in hand with the Vmon X Vmon strategy as well. It allows us to kind of take chip damage off our opponent pretty early on, and with the X Vmon we can unsuspend it and just keep getting in for real quick pot shots. And because it's got V in the name, it's another card that we can search off of Arena as well. It's as Davis as well. So next we're going to move on to the Veedramon Zero, and this is the partner that you would get with the Tai V-Tamer in one of the box topper packs. And the Veedramon Zero is here for a couple of reasons. So the first one, it's a V name, so it's another target that we can search off of Arena specifically. And we're not generally going to be using its on when attacking effect. We're mostly using it for its inheritable. But I'll talk about both real quick. So the attacking effect is that if you have a blue tamer in play, you can trash the top 3 cards of your deck to give this Digimon plus 2,000. Now, this Veedramon himself doesn't have jamming, nor does it have a reason to get jamming. There's no way to give it jamming, unfortunately, in this version of the deck. But the reason we play 2 is because of its inheritable effect, which is when attacking, we can place 3 non-Digiate cards from our trash to the bottom of our deck in any order to activate draw 1. So this allows us to kind of, again, add an extra layer of consistency to keep digging through our deck to get to our key combo pieces. Because as we kind of go through the rest of the deck, you're going to see that we play a very slim ultimate lineup and a very slim mega lineup, because we're only trying to get one specific main line top-end Digimon into play. So all we want to do is dig through our deck as much as possible to get to those specific pieces. And to round off our champions, we're just playing 2 Grizzlymon, just to have an extra idea to have a blocker in the deck, and we can potentially get it off of Davis for extra protection. For ultimates, we're just playing 4 Arrow Veedramon and 1 Zudomon. Arrow Veedramon we touched upon earlier in the Blue Omni deck. And Arrow Veedramon here, when Digivolving, similarly to the X Vmon, if we have a blue tamer in play, we get to unsuspend one of our blue Digimons. Whereas X Vmon was limited to 1 level 4 or lower specifically, Arrow Veedramon can actually unsuspend literally every Digimon in the deck because they're all blue. So again, this allows you to create some cool combos with other jamming Digimon in the deck, depending on how you've built up your stacks and stuff like that. You can also unsuspend itself if you want to get an extra attack in. And the inheritable effect here is that when a Digimon becomes unsuspended during the main phase, it gains jamming. So, again, if we can build up our stack in the perfect way, we can actually give our UlforceVeedramon maybe 4, 5, 6 attacks, and all of them will have jamming after the first one where it unsuspends with Arrow Veedramon. We continue to just kind of swing for the fences with impunity, kind of like the Imperial Digimon strategy. And the only ultimate we're really playing is just 4 copies of this Arrow Veedramon, because this is the best one to complement with Ulforce to make sure that it will always survive, and to make sure that we can get those security checks in without any fear. And we're just playing one lonely copy of Zudomon here. This is just the set 1 Zudomon. On play, draw 2. Again, just an extra layer of consistency, extra layers of redundancy where we can just filter through more cards in our deck. And the inheritable comes up not very often, but often enough, where if our opponent has something without a source, we get to gain 1 memory on attack. That pretty much does it for the main deck. Let's go over our options real quick. We're just playing 4 Hammer Spark. Again, it's a blue deck. Pretty much all you need just to kind of get... Hammer Spark allows you to play more Tamers, basically, throughout the course of your turn, so your turn doesn't necessarily end, and you actually get to play Digimon as well. And then the last 2 cards are Cocytus Breath. And this is because, since the deck takes a little bit longer to set up, and it's a little bit slower in terms of setting up your Tamer and slowly building up your main stack, you need cards that can kind of protect you from your opponent's big onslaughts. Sure, you can do little amounts of chip damage here and there to your opponent's security, but that doesn't prevent them from building up their own stacks and kind of countering you and attacking you for massive amounts of damage. And because we don't necessarily have the space or the means to play a removal cards in this deck, minus something like Omni, for example, but you wouldn't necessarily play Omni in this deck because Ulforce is literally the main win condition. You wouldn't want to evolve over it because you're trying to win the game with Ulforce himself. We need some cards that we can either A, throw into our security that can help slow down our opponent or set them back, or have cards in our hand that we can play to set our opponent back as well. And that's why I've decided on 2, Cocytus Breath. I would have loved to play 3, but I needed to find the space for all of these Tamers, and I'm not quite sure what I would have changed. So again, this is just a first draft, but it is working so far pretty good, pretty well, sorry. It's pretty fast, and in terms of like how it gets its attack off, it is really slow to set up. But once it does set up, it does kind of snowball in a really cool way, similar to like the Shine Greymon deck. It's kind of like the predecessor to Shine Greymon in a way, because this had the main Tamer strategy first. But yeah, I'm really excited to play with it a little bit more, and I'm really excited to refine it and see if I can get it to a point where it can actually stand up competitively against the big guns. Because right now it's kind of a bit of a tier 3 rogue contender, but I'm doing my best to kind of keep tweaking it a little bit more to make sure that I can take it to a big tournament and potentially do really well. But if you like what you see here, and if you have any comments, let me know what you would change to this deck, or if, you know, maybe I'm way out in left field. Maybe I have no idea what the heck I'm talking about. Ulforce has been around for a long time, and it's been a fan favorite. So if you know something I don't, or if I'm not playing the deck or building the deck properly, let me know. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give it a thumbs down. If you like what you see here on Overground, please consider subscribing and helping us reach our monthly goal milestones. So I've been Mike, aka Sanaku, and I'll see you guys in the next one.